When you're early in the business, look, the reality of it is if you want to be successful, I don't know any other way. You got to put in more time, particularly in the early in the business, right? So I would structure yourself so that you're doing that busy work either on a very specific day or early in the morning before meetings start or in the evening after meetings are done. Try to focus on activity and seeing people during the day.
Great to have you on the Seven Figure Podcast. I'm super excited, man. I want to start straight in because as we were getting ready to start recording here, we're talking about a trip you just took with your family, and which is really aligned for me about being a seven-figure advisor. It's like being on that journey, but also making sure that you spend that time with your family, look after yourself, and have that holistic approach. And you went on a road trip as well. Tell us about that experience and the extra piece that you just mentioned as well in terms of the challenge that you made for yourself to going through that.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here, Nick. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Yeah, man. I mean, I often say to my friends, my family, my clients, I do this for my family and I do it for other families. That's what I do it for. Everything's about family for me. Yeah, it's super important for me to set time aside and make sure we're really intentional about spending time together. And luckily, I have teenage kids, a beautiful wife. We love going on road trips. We love spending time together. We love to travel. And so we're up here in Alberta, Canada, and we drove down to Vegas. Took a nice road trip over a few days. And I think it would be about maybe a few days or a week before we left. I'd have to check for sure the calendar. But I've decided to just give up drinking for a while. And I have a tentative date for Christmas, New Year, Christmas Eve, but that's not written in stone anywhere. We'll see. I might not even want to drink then, but it's just something that I wanted to do so that I could focus on my family, I could focus on business, focus on health. And I just noticed that it was becoming a bit more of a distraction for me. I don't know if you've ever experienced that or people listening experienced it, but it was just a distraction. And I was kind of like, what's my motivation? I go to dinner and have a few drinks. Why do I have to have a few drinks when I go to dinner or I go to a social setting, play poker with my friends? I'm like, it's just like a constant, and maybe that's a Canadian thing, but it's a constant like, oh yeah, let's get some drinks. It's always drinks, right? And I'm getting older, man. It doesn't feel as good as it used to when you wake up in the morning if you have maybe one or two too many. So I was just like, it was kind of distracting me from other things. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna set that aside. And so I just mentioned that we took the road trip and we're going to Vegas. So I spent an entire week in Vegas with my family and I didn't drink a drop of alcohol. We went to some really nice restaurants. We went to some shows. We did all the stuff and no alcohol. I guess I didn't really realize how much more present I am without any kind of alcohol in those little moments that you maybe not even aware of that you have with your kids, with your wife, the experience, whatever you're doing, you're just totally present and clear versus, being a little bit cloudy. So it was an amazing trip and I'm pretty motivated. I'm pretty inspired to keep going.
So it's really interesting to me when it comes to that presence you talked about with kids. My kids are younger than yours, and so it has even more impact. I think it's a function of age as well. But what really struck me recently is putting my 4-year-old in the back of my truck and putting her helping her buckle her seatbelt, and I'm in there. I'm thinking about other things, and maybe I'm looking at the floor as I'm doing it, and that's just nothing to me. Like it's just like the day, like part of the day, right? It's not nothing negatively. It's just I don't even think about it because we've had so many rotations of that stuff. Like being adults, but for her, the day is much more distinctive. Each part of the day is much more distinctive because she's experiencing those things. Whereas me taking the time to look at some kind of her own, like I don't know for sure, but like that, she's going to remember that difference between, and that could be the difference between when she grows up thinking about my dad was attentive to me. So thanks for sharing that because the whole trip versus of attentiveness, like it makes a big difference. It's so interesting. I talk to my parents about things that I remember when I grew up versus what they remember, completely different. And so that impact is huge.
Well, I'll just share for you and for your listeners, not that I'm, some old wise guy expert dad, but my kids are 15 and 17 and luckily we have really good conversations. And I talk to them a lot about when they were a kid and things that I think about and things that maybe I regret or wish I did better. And you're exactly right. The things that they remember and the things that impact them are not the same things that you think about and that you remember. But the fact that you're that present to those kind of things, those little things really matter. So being with your kids and paying attention and all that, that is really, really important. So if you're present to that, you're way ahead of the game.
And Vern, no wonder we're talking about the kids, right? Being part of Rebel Dads organization. Shout out to Rebel Dads, to Adam and Derek. Everyone should check that out. REBL Dads, super cool. So tie back to business, because what you went on to start to say was that actually when you got back from that trip, threw yourself back in the deep end, you went to a 4-day advisor conference as well, and like make the distinction between what that's looked like in the past for you versus what it is now. And like the overlay is the alcohol thing. So that's the juxtaposition between those experiences.
Yeah, again, I'm assuming based on your audience, most people have some experience of what it's like having gone to some conference or an advisor conference. And if you're in the industry, it's no secret that everyone's like at the event, and we know exactly what's going to happen afterwards, right? People are going to dinner. There's maybe some kind of a social thing, but it's drinks, right? Lots of drinking going on. And there's all the cliches and the jokes of people who showed up the next day on we start on Sunday night, people show up on the Monday and they're like, oh yeah, I got to my room at like a couple hours before my alarm type of thing. And I'm like, oh my word. And so normally, I would be, you go there and you're only seeing these people one time per year. So you're going there to get the lessons, you're going there to get the continuing education credits, but then you're also going there to connect with your mates and be social and have a good time. And so, this year is the first year that I was that guy who, went out for a dinner, maybe had a non-alcoholic, a zero proof beer or whatever, had a nice dinner. I'm back at the room by 9. I'm resting up. I go to bed. And I don't really sleep well in hotel rooms, but that's a different story. And I get to the conference, I'm there before the doors are open, right? And I was telling you before the podcast, like normally I'd be like rushing and texting a friend, being like, "Hey man, save me a seat. Make sure I have a place to sit." Right? So I think that I actually was able. I mean, obviously, I was able to pull a lot more value out of the speakers and the events themselves too. Like just being more present. I think that's the overtone. I was able to really connect with a lot of messaging that who knows, I might have missed some of these things if I was in a different state of mind. So just that focus.
It's also great to be able to slow things down. I think that's how we do it, because the older we get, the more successful our businesses are, the more responsibility we have, the big we build our family or the people that we support and impact, the faster things go. And so if we can, the more present we can be, the more focus on the specifics and the smaller things, that actually how we slow things down and our experience of time. So I think that's a huge, huge distinction to make. Share a little bit, if you would, Vern, about the context of what your business is. And most of our listeners probably be on the US side. You're up in Canada. There's some differences of where things are. And look at me coming from Englishman. The Englishman in North Carolina, of course. But
I
I
hate to
think
break it to you, man. You're an American now.
that's right. That's right. Right. Well, I've got this thing where I do two things, right? Because I want to honor both of those. And so if I'm describing something, I'll say, well, this is how we do this in England, but I'll also say, well, this is how we do it in America. So I'm we both sides. Yeah, that's always my plan, to honor everyone. But yeah, tell us about your business. You would care to share, and I love your story in that, because of the team aspect. I'm sure you go into a little bit as well. So there's lots of great stuff to share. So please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So again, I don't exactly know how things work in the US from a licensing perspective and all that kind of stuff. In Canada, it's you could specialize, in stocks and investment banking and all that kind of stuff. Or if you get into financial services in general, you can get obviously different designations and all that. But generally, people can do some investment work and they can do some insurance work. I gravitated toward the insurance industry. So I focus heavily on life insurance, what we call living benefits, so critical illness, disability, sort of that type of protection, and long-term planning, estate planning. And what I'd like to do, I like to sort of view myself as a bit of a liaison, a bit of a concierge, if you will, a bit of a quarterback for their plan. I really focus on the relationship. So if I'm not the guy for their accounting, like legal advice, maybe investment advice, I like to build relationships with other professionals and then sort of guide my clients in the right direction based on their overall kind of game plan. And one of the primary things that we focus on is what we like to call the living benefits of life insurance. So I do a lot of whole life insurance, and we use that whole life insurance policy as sort of a savings tool. And then we actually use those policies while people are alive, and then obviously after they're gone. So it's not just a hey, you got to die to win. Actually, I'll do a little shameless plug for this great book right here. This is a Canadian book, but it literally is titled "You Don't Have to Die to Win." So he talks about all the other financial instruments that are out there, but how you can benefit from using life insurance while you're alive, which is pretty cool. And so that's kind of the core of what I do in terms of bringing value to my clients. And if you have some questions about how my team is structured and what I do to allow myself to kind of focus more on the client versus all the busy work, because I probably don't need to tell you that in this industry, that's one of the biggest challenges is there's a lot of busy work that is super necessary, but it doesn't necessarily bring value to the client and it doesn't generate revenue. And that's a huge challenge.
I like to think about how does that affect a planner or an advisor, depending on what you call yourself, what that looks like, depending on where they are in the business, right? First couple of years, just getting your feet under you, 8 to 10 years in, getting going, building a team, 20 years plus, what does it look like? I think all of that stuff is such an important thing to think about. Where for you, perhaps past that initial, like, oh, this is real for me, I do think of it like a business, not a job, it like actually is rolling. Where do you see that first next step up in terms of what you must push through in order to get to that next level of success in context with that busy work?
Yeah. This kind of ties into those, one of those, hey, what would you have done differently type of things?
Yeah.
Right. And I think in this industry, it might be, it's like I call it psychological warfare, right? They say the loneliest place to be is in your mind, in your office,
That's
sitting in
right.
your office,
That's
right?
right.
And one of my mentors always used to say to me, he'd say all the time, he'd say, Vern, activity absorbs anxiety. Activity absorbs anxiety. Activity, 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 right? So I'd get caught up, 10, 11, 2 p.m., 10, 11 in the morning or 2 p.m. Here I am doing some type of administration work. Well, when you're early in the business, look, the reality of it is if you want to be successful, I don't know any other way. You got to put in more time, particularly in the early in the business, right? So I would structure yourself so that you're doing that busy work either on a very specific day or early in the morning before meetings start or in the evening after meetings are done, and try to focus on activity and seeing people during the day when people are available to be seen. If you have to get up a little earlier on a Saturday, if you have kids, like I used to do that sometimes. I get up early in the morning before my kids were up and I would take care of some things so that I could be clear and focused with them and present and not thinking about that stuff while I was with them. So I would say those types of things that are not bringing value to clients and they're not bringing any value to you in terms of revenue, do those on the off hours and then focus on your clients when you should be. And then as you kind of grow, this is kind of scary for a lot of younger people in the business. Maybe even if you're really successful and you're really hands on, you want to control everything. But I would say the sooner you can delegate or hand those responsibilities off to somebody else, the sooner you can get yourself, we call it a strategic assistant. The sooner you can get yourself an assistant, I would invest in that immediately, because if it costs you, I don't know what it would cost you there, like cost you 60 to 80 grand a year. People are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Well, what if you invest 60 to 80 grand a year to make 200? That's a pretty good trade off. And if I can add to that, just because you never know where people are coming from, understand that the most valuable person in your business is your assistant. Absolutely. Nothing goes without my assistant. She controls everything and we work together. She holds me accountable. I coach and guide her to be able to bring more value to clients and get strategic. That's why we call it a strategic assistant. She literally helps me generate revenue, like how she communicates with clients. I've had countless clients reach out to me and go, Vern, your assistant is amazing. She's a huge value add. She's super helpful. Like, it's going to make you look good as an advisor too, but that person is really, really important. I've had days, I kid you not, where I'm a human being. I will message my assistant in the morning and I'll just be like, listen, I am feeling overwhelmed. I am a little bit tired. I got a loaded day and I don't got it today. And she'll be like, hey, no, you got this. Listen, one step at a time, one task at a time. I will do my best to keep everything else off your plate. Like she filters my emails. We have text messages that come in from clients. She'll answer and respond to those text messages. She only messages me with the things that she can't respond to or that are maybe a 911 or whatever, right? So she's doing her best to filter as much of that information so that I'm focused on the client. So she goes way above and beyond, quote, the job description in terms of how she brings value to me and to the client. So your assistant is super important. It's not just anybody that can do that or just a job. Like that person is critically important to your business.
Sounds like you have a real A player. How long has she been with you?
So I got super lucky because I worked with my original assistant. Shout out to Ashley if you ever hear this. She's amazing. I think I worked with her for 2 to 3 years. Like she was really there during my critical growth years, and we became very close. And then sometimes when you have really good people, unfortunately, they grow too. So she got a promotion, but what she did, because she cared about me so much and she wanted to help her family, is she actually got her sister-in-law hired, who it was almost like a clean handoff. Melissa is amazing, and I've been working with Melissa now for about a year. So Ashley and Melissa were both instrumental to my growth and success.
Yeah. So those couple of stars you've had 2 times in a row with your assistants, so very important.
So for context, I did have an assistant for a while who, nothing against her, God bless her, but it was very clear and easy to tell that it was just a job for her. It was like, get through the day, do the least amount of that I can, and that's it, right? So I would say recognize that as early as possible. Give them some coaching, give them some correction. If they take the coaching and they take the correction and they take the action, great. If you notice that whole thing 2 or 3 times, I would say hire slow, fire fast, right? I don't personally have experience with this, but there is lots of options for like a VA, a virtual assistant. And from what I understand with those platforms, you can buy blocks of time. You can kind of work your way up. You know, this goes without saying, but one of the things that I would recommend for advisors is, I don't know if you ever heard of a model called profit first, but you don't need to go too deep into it. Like, look, don't spend everything you make. Put your money aside for taxes, put money aside for your operating expense, put money aside for your remuneration to pay yourself and whatever other expenses, right? And then you could, I don't know how it works there, but again, if it's commission or a certain salary or whatever, every case that you close, take a certain percentage aside and put that aside for growth so that you can hire an assistant and make sure you have 6 months to a year worth of expense to pay that person, so that if you don't close a case that week, you're not panicking about like, I can't pay my assistant. And then, one thing I would say that you can also do generally, friends, family, who knows, right? Your best friend's wife, maybe they want a little part-time gig. Maybe they're not licensed or whatever yet. Oh, that's another key point. I'm all over the place here. But eventually, if you can get your assistant to actually get their licensed, for me, it would be like their life insurance license. It just allows them to do so many more things and access so much more information and sign things on your behalf. It just makes it so much easier from a service perspective. But again, building up to it, like maybe you can just work out, hey, 15, 20 hours a week, look, X amount of dollars. They have a little bit of flexibility in their schedule and they can help you just manage your schedule, or maybe some of the communications, or maybe they're not doing everything, but they're taking off some of that workload. And then as you build it up, but I would say, again, as soon as you can get yourself an assistant or some help with that busy work, invaluable.
There's no advisor or planner that I've talked to that doesn't agree with that. And whether it's the first one, the second one, the third one, though the tactics to apply to it are so important. But I got to come back to what you said, right? Especially early on, it's a business. The money that you're getting paid is not your salary. Like, you've got a business, don't spend everything you've got. And that really applies, again, when you're first starting out. That's important to think about. But wherever you are going along, you'd be thinking about, as I'm allocating these funds, what's allocating to go back into the business? Because as soon as you take $1 out of the business, yeah, you can do stuff with it personally, but you're more likely to spend it when you're in the business. Like, the dollar can be multiplied. Once it's out, it's like a dead dollar. So the more dollars you keep in the business, the more that you can make in the business with those dollars.
There are people who are fee for service. The way that my contract works, the way that I'm structured, the life insurance companies pay me commission. Well, I always tell my clients this, like, look, I have skin in the game. I'm really careful who I do business with, because if you buy a policy today, or I show you a solution and you like it and you're like, yeah, let's go. Fantastic. We close the case. I give you coaching and guidance. And for whatever reason, whether you don't like me or you just, God forbid, lost your job, you can't fund your system, whatever it is, 18 months from now, you cancel your policy. I get to pay back 100% of my commission, 100% immediately. So make sure, if you're in that situation, minimum capital surplus reserve. Like, go look at how a life insurance company manages their money and do the same thing. Put money aside in case there's a chargeback. And if you don't have the commission to cover it that week, you got to pay that right away, or they'll take your contract. Like, have that ready to go. Don't mess with the golden goose.
Man, that is gold. I love the skin in the game as well. That's such an important way to think about it. What would you say is something that you've seen that most advisors aren't doing? What's something that you've seen that's successful for you that's just obvious? I mean, because we all have those things where just some things come easy, and sometimes not that obvious that other people have challenges in those areas. So what might you say for you that you do that most don't?
Oh gosh, when I say most, I mean keep in mind again, that we got the baby boom going on, right? When we were at this event, they just said in the next, what was it, by 2030? I think it was like I can't remember a huge. I can't remember the stats. A huge amount of advisors are going to turn 65. Right now, granted, this is becoming more and more frequent with the younger generations, and some older people are embracing it. But man, you got to embrace technology. And I'm not a tech savvy guy, but embracing technology, whether that is some type of automation, texting, talk to your clients and get feedback from them and find out how they like to communicate. How do they like to learn? I mean, this seems like table stakes, right? But then be really straight with them about how you communicate. I tell my clients straight, I go, look, if you want to hear from me today, send me a text message. It's just what it is. If you send me an email, I think of that as, hey, 24 to 48 hours. It's just what it is for me. It's my lowest form of communication, but I'm just honest with them about it. If this isn't super important, shoot me an email. If you want to hear from me today, shoot me a text. It's as simple as that. Just tell them straight, right? And then the other thing that I would say too is I'm in a bit of a transition here. I'm about to launch my own brand because I've spent many years here building a really big team, inside a team representing their brand. And now I'm stepping out to build my own. And one of the things that we did to build this team and to become known and to bring in a ton of high quality leads and be able to attract the people that we wanted and repel the people we didn't want, and them to really know what to expect when they got here, was we do a lot of content. Like, it doesn't take anything. You don't have to be a freaking wizard, or to do a little bit of social media and a little, like, YouTube. Start a YouTube channel or something like that. Maybe get a little bit of help from somebody, whether it's editing or somebody who can give you some advice on how to set up your YouTube channel or something. But get online, man. That's where people are. So those are some things that I would recommend.
I love it. So first of all, communication. Set up the expectations on the front end. What's the value? Hey, client, what do you like? This is what I prefer. Let's get clear about that. Let's not make any assumptions. And then building a team through the team, being able to bring in tons of leads. It's being able to make content, some sort of marketing, getting out there, dripping to your prospects, and just pushing out there as well. What would you say for a team? Let's just say a couple 100 million under management. Maybe there's one lead advisor, two or three in the team overall. If they're thinking about going down that marketing road, they're not really doing anything in that spot right now. What would you say would be the first foray to do that? You mentioned starting a YouTube channel, but what would you say is like, what's the important part for that marketing piece in that example?
Hopefully this answers the question. And again, to your point, this might be table stakes, but I don't want to make any assumptions. I see so much content where people are trying to be a certain way. They're trying to do something. They're trying to convey a message. Well, I'm not a big Star Wars guy, but there is no try, there is only do, right? Hopefully you can tell by me being this. This is me, man. This is me. This is how I am. This is how I am with my clients. This is how I am on content. This is how I am with my kids. This is how I am in the grocery store. So show up and be you. The world is starving for authenticity. Everything is BS. Everything is fake. Everything is nonsense. This is a real window. This is my real background. I'm a real human being. Look, you see that? Like, people want that. So in your marketing, in your content, just be you. Because here's the deal: a problem prospect is a problem client. And if you're trying to be a chameleon and you're trying to be a certain way and you're just trying to close a case or attract people to make money, you are going to hate yourself in a few years when you're super successful and you have all kinds of money and you have a bunch of clients you don't want to hear from. So I would just say, in your marketing, in your messaging, all that, be authentic, and just be real, be yourself.
That's exactly it, right? Because it should be the easiest thing in the world to be yourself. Why do you think it's attractive to not be?
You know what? Not that I'm some psychology expert or whatever, but just, I've had my own journey of growth, man. It took me many, many, many years to be like, oh, like, you mean it's that easy? I could just be myself? Because as a little kid, right? Like, you have like these little, mental scar tissue that happens. Like, you went to talk to a kid and they said, "Oh, your pants are stupid," or whatever, or you said something and you stuttered, or you spelt something wrong in front of the class. Now all of a sudden you're like, "Well, I'm never going to be in front of people ever again." Or oh gosh, I got to make sure I never do that again. That hurt bad, right? So I think we just, as adults, we kind of shape ourselves, and then we kind of try to be a certain way when we realize at the end of the day, we're all like foxes, right? You're more scared of me than I am of you, right? At the end of the day. So most people are more concerned about themselves and how they look and how they feel and how they show up than anything that you're doing. I think that's just unfortunately a part of growing up. And as you get older, you just realize like, oh, nobody actually really cares what I'm doing at all. And so just be yourself and be real. And I don't know what that psychology is, but I've done a lot of work in that area. And like I said, once it kind of clicks and you go, oh, this is like way simpler than I thought it was. I could just literally be myself. And at the end of the day, it's like I tell my kids, if you're lucky, you're going to wind up with maybe five really good friends, maybe 10, right? Most people, you're not going to marry them. Most people are not going to be your business partner. Most people are not going to be your best friend. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what it is. So you only want to be around the people that want to be around you anyway. So you're best off just to be yourself, and you'll attract what and who you are, and you'll repel what you're not. And it's like that in business too.
Vern, that's going to resonate with so many people because all the people listening to this are humans. And that fundamental, I believe it just comes from a protective place. And we all have that. And we all have to go through the journey. There's no shortcuts, but we can get through it quicker. My hope and part of what this podcast is all about is showing other advisors, other planners that like we're all in this place, and some people have gone through that part of their journey. And my hope is that we just accelerate that a little bit more. And so that's absolute gold. Thanks so much for sharing that, Vern, and putting it out there.
Hopefully that brings some value to some people. I want to share something that might, again, seem like a no brainer. If it's okay with you, if I can jump in and just share something fairly quickly here. To your point earlier about maybe a couple hundred million under a management, or maybe you have a decent team, or maybe you're brand new in the business. And I've seen this at all levels. Something that is critically important that I probably should have mentioned earlier when you're like, hey, maybe are some people not doing this, or what's something that you could be doing? I did this for a really long time and it was really painful. And again, looking back, I'm like, damn, I wish I would have realized this sooner. And this is going to probably sound silly to you, but to some, they may be like, oh, yeah, I got to do that. Man, have your standard operating procedures, follow a process. Whether it's right from meeting somebody all the way through to whatever it is, gathering their information, presenting them a solution, getting through the application process, onboarding the client, and then serving them moving forward. It doesn't have to be the greatest process ever. And I like to follow like a version 1 type of thing. Hey, here's version 1 of my process, but get a process. Your biggest problem, if you're not being as successful as you want, or you feel confused or lost, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. I've seen people who make tons of money and they basically don't even know what they're doing, right? And so, and they look like they got it all together, but they don't have a standard process that they follow. And one of my mentors used to say that to me all the time. He would say, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Hey, Vern, I know what your problem is. I go, what's that? He goes, you don't have a process. And I had no earthly idea what he was talking about. So figure out a process, or get some advice, get some coaching, follow that process, document it, get really, really, really good at it. Even if it's a crappy process, get really good at it. And then you just tweak little things and add layers to it, but always follow a process, because it's going to allow you to be more focused and intentional and successful with that process. But then bring new people on, train your assistant, do all the stuff, because you have a process now. And then if you're going to basically follow all those same steps, and then you tweak one thing, and then you can actually beta test it and see how that went. Oh, that's way better, or that's not good. Sometimes people want to start at like level 7 when they're at level 2. Like, for example, adding a YouTube channel. Well, maybe make sure you have your process in place and you're able to deal with volume, or you're able to deal with a client when they actually show up. What happens all of a sudden? You get all these clients and you're not even able to deal with the client because you don't have a process. So maybe, focus on the basics, the fundamentals, and then build, right? Don't build a business on a sandy foundation.
It's wonderful. One of the things I hear so often is, oh, I used to do that when I was just getting started. Because when you're just getting started, you're forced to have a process because you don't know what you're doing. And what I see is with successful advisors, they get good at what it is, and so they know it. And so there's this double-edged sword of like, I just know what to do. I wing it, but I know I'm really good at winging it. And like that has utility for sure, but it definitely presents going back to okay, what actually are we doing here? And it becomes much harder to hand over because they're not actually thinking through the steps, they're just doing it and it's flowing out of them. But to scale, in order to scale, that really has to be written down. You heard it here, folks. Like, you got to know what those SOPs are. And I was just having a conversation with the COO of an advisory company yesterday in the same way. She was having trouble with one of the ladies in her team really understanding how to do a certain task. And I asked her to make sure that the lady that's doing this task to actually do the documentation of it, have her bring back and show you what the steps are for success here. And that will show you that she knows what it is. And now you've got a process documented. It's so important, man. So important. I got so much gold here, Vern. I'd love to have you on again. I think we can keep going for a couple of hours here. There's no doubt, actually. I got to ask you about one thing because it always comes up. Referrals, such a prevalent thing in the business. I like to think about them as introductions. You talked earlier about systems and scale and leads generation. That's really its own animal. But how do you think about referrals? What's important to be successful with referrals?
Oh man, this is such a good question. Again, I'll beat this drum till the cows come home. Be authentic. Be honest. I am super blessed to say that I get a steady stream of referrals. But is that because I'm really nice and I help the client and it just happens magically? Sometimes, yeah, but I ask. I'm super intentional about asking. And this isn't about me, it's about them and it's about the people that they surround themselves with. And I got this from one of my mentors. I don't know where he got it, but he uses this rhythm that he calls give, 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 ask, give, 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 ask. So what I do is I'll share a quick story if you don't mind. Around this time last year, actually, I noticed I was really busy. My calendar was full. I was seeing lots of people, and then I kept doing all the same normal stuff, and it came to a screeching halt. And I was like, oh, my calendar is pretty open next week. That's odd. Let me just focus on some cleanup. No big deal. Cool. Kept going about my business. And the next week, my calendar was really open. I'm going, okay, what's going on here? Right. So our lead flow was slowing down a little bit. Then I was like, okay, maybe I'm too dependent on my leads. Let me focus more on my existing clients because I have a lot of really good clients. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to get in touch and see where I can bring some value and see what's going on in their world. Who else in your world could benefit from the work that we've done? So I get together with people and I would just have, you can call it a script, but I just have a conversation with them. Hey, Nick, tell me what's been going on in your life in the last few months. What are some big milestones? What are some wins that we can document? What's something we can focus on? Or maybe where did you get off track? Where could we give you some coaching? How could we take some corrective action? Right. And they go, blah, 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 blah. I go, oh, great. That's working out good. And then they're struggling with something. I share a little bit of value and I go, hey, is that making a difference? Does that help? They're like, oh my gosh, Vern, I'm so glad we met. I go, awesome. Awesome. I say, hey, Nick, I got a question for you. What's that? If you won the lottery today, who's the first three people you'd call?
Oh, that's great.
If you had a catastrophic event, who are the first three people you call? I know that you have people in your world, Nick, that are just a yes for you. They trust you. So let's take insurance, let's take banking, let's take all that stuff out of the equation. And do you like hanging out with me? Do you get some value every time we meet? Yes. Okay, great. Well, just tell them, hey, Nick, I like you. We've been friends for many years. You trust me. I trust you. Listen, I've been working with a guy for a few years. We do some financial stuff together. I think that you and him could get together and just create some kind of value. Is there any downside to meeting for 30 minutes? And they go, no. I go, great. Who's coming to mind? And I just get them to bridge a quick email introduction. I respond to that email introduction with a Loom video. So they can see me, they can hear me. I introduce myself electronically like that. And then it works out really, really great. I play with people. I have fun. I say, Nick, what if you're 15 years down the road and things are going amazingly well and all your friends and family are at this gathering and they're going like, Nick, like things are going so good. You look great. Things seem to be going good in your family. Like, what have you been doing? And all of a sudden you tell them about me or tell them what you've been doing. Like, how pissed are they going to be that you didn't introduce them to me 15 years ago? Right? Like I just have fun, right? So those are just some ideas, but just again, it's a process. I have a clear process that I use for referral, and I'm consistent with it, and I just keep kind of tweaking it. And I don't harass people, but every once in a while, I'll just tell them to be honest. Like, hey, Nick, like if you don't, no pressure, but is this something that you're willing? Are you open to doing this? Are you open to it? If you're open to it, great. If not, just let me know. I won't bother you about it. But if you tell me that you are open to it, I will reach out and I'll hold you accountable. Is that fair? They're like, yeah, that's fair. Cool. And I coach my clients, I train them on how to make the conversation ridiculously easy because they're not doing the business that you're doing. They feel uncomfortable. It's awkward for them. So keep that in mind. Be a human being about it and make it easy for them.
Beautiful, man. It's a fantastic share. For me, it all comes back down to the first things you said about relationships and building that. Without that, you don't have that. I love the reach out piece to go back to them and say, are you okay? Are you checking in? And you're thinking all the time about how can I add value? As you said, give, ask. And you're essentially having a feedback conversation. How can I help you? I love layering in that as well, because another way of doing it is like, what can I help you with right now? What else is going on? What do you love that we do together? What else would you like to see that we do together? What else don't you like? Do you want to back off on? Is there anything like that? And that just makes the relationship even better as well. And then from that, there's a lead into the next piece as well. I love what you said about like just make it easier. They're not doing it like we're doing it. Like they're not necessarily in that spot. So cool. So much gold here. Thanks for sharing so much, Vern. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? And we've covered a lot already. Any parting words you'd like to share?
Again, it might be kind of a no brainer, especially for, I'm sure, the people who are going to be listening to this podcast. But, don't get stagnant. Don't think that you've arrived in knowledge. I took years and years and years and spent tons of money and time and energy on personal development. I went to courses and retreats and programs and coaching. And I thought in my early to mid 20s, like I thought, this is who I am. This is my life. I wasn't aware of this. I got enlightened to the fact that, oh, you can change, you can grow, you can acquire, you can transform yourself. You can become that worthy ideal of who you want to be. So maybe spend some time of figuring out what that is, work backwards and start acting in kind, start taking action and go to some programs, hang out with people like Nick and learn from those people and start to emulate their behavior. And over the course of time, you won't see it. That's why it's really important to look back and see how far you've come. You will totally transform yourself if you're just consistent and you just never, and I mean never, ever give up.
Ah, you're awesome, Vern. Listen, you said maybe it's not for people that listen to this. Maybe they got it already. Maybe it's obvious, but it's the obvious stuff that we need to be reminded of, because it's so often that I'll work with someone, I'll see something and they'll go, oh yeah, I used to do that. And oh, okay. Well, when you did it work? It's like, yeah, yeah. Do you want to start doing it again? And like, it comes around, like you probably stopped doing it for a good reason because there's another thing that they need to focus on, but it's not about new tools in the tool belt necessarily. It's going, okay, let's go to the shed and see where our tool belts are and let's pull out the right tool. And that reminder, so important, man. What a pleasure, Vern. I really appreciate you coming on and to the Seven Figure Advisor podcast. And I know that a lot of people will be taking a lot of value from this. So I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Love to come back. Appreciate it.